And then we have Center Pack, Ashley Clift from Bolivar High School. Thank you for joining. We always love to have the Center Pack students here. We've got a few save the dates. The new teacher welcome luncheon. I know it seems like we just got out of school, but please keep this in mind. That's the save the date for August 10th. It's held each year at SBU for all new teachers in Polk County. So if you know a new teacher, new to the district, please invite them to attend. It's a great welcome for all of those new teachers. And if your business would like to donate a gift, items are now being accepted. You can drop those off at the chamber office. We're asking that you bring 100 items. We're expecting somewhere around that number for new teachers. And if you could get those by August 4th so we can have those bags organized. We're excited to let you know that Bolivar Night at the Cardinals is going to take place this year. We've got a date. We've got July 29th. That's a Thursday. So I think that's the Dollar Brat night. It's going to be at 7:05 start time against the Arkansas Travelers. And just to let you guys know, we are going to be auctioning off the first pitch for that at the next Networking at Noon next month. So please plan to attend, and that should be a good time, especially since we weren't able to have that last year. Okay, I'd like to introduce our program presenter today. We have Christina Bravata from Citizens Memorial Hospital, and she's the Addiction Recovery Program Manager, and she's going to speak to us today about how to improve employee health, dealing with stress, addictions, and the effects on the workplace. Thank you. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll try to juggle all the things up here. And I'll get the elephant out of the room. I am pregnant, but I promise I will not go into labor during your lunch. All right. So, okay. Thank you so much. So, again, my name is Christina Bravata, and I'm just so honored to be here today to speak to you about something I'm very passionate about. I'm the co-founder and program manager for the Addiction Recovery Program at the hospital, and talking about employee health, stress, and addictions that affect all of us in the workplace. I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. Just out of curiosity, I was wondering if I could see by show of hands, how many of us in here, either ourselves or a family member or a close friend, knows somebody that has been affected by substance use disorder or addiction? Just look around. I don't think there's hardly a hand not raised. So this is a subject that we should all be talking more about because it's just as prevalent as the pandemic. Catch things with my belly time to time. One of the things I like to discuss before talking about addiction is the difference between addiction versus dependence, just so we all know we're on the same page with terminology. Dependence is the physical reliance on a substance. Dependence on a substance can involve a cycle of tolerance and withdrawal. Addiction is when substance dependence leads to aberrant behavior and a diminished quality of life. You can be dependent on a substance but not necessarily have an addiction to it that it has negative consequences. Somebody might be dependent on insulin, for example. Substance use disorder, SUD, you're gonna see that throughout this presentation, is a term used for the cycle of use, tolerance, withdrawal, and relapse that is the result of addiction. I'm only going to geek out for a second, I promise. But when we're talking about addiction, we treat it as a recurring chronic brain disease. So I wanted to show you what that means on the medical side of what we do. This is a picture of a normal neurosynapse or a brain cell. And when we're developing, from the time we're in our mother's womb all the way up to 3, 4, 5 years old, our brain is developing something called our reward center. And it's the part of our brain that teaches us what we need to do to survive. So we have these little bean-shaped receptors in our brain that are called mu receptors. And when beta endorphins hit those mu receptors, when we do things like drink water or eat food, we drop dopamine. Everybody's heard of dopamine, right? That's what makes us feel so good. Well, when that dopamine releases, that's actually what teaches our brain, we need to do this to survive. Keep doing this. So what happens when we introduce other substances? When substances such as alcohol or opioids invade our system, they actually hijack that reward center of our brain. And it causes surges of dopamine that in many people can create strong cravings to keep taking that substance again and again and again. Over time, that reward system does grow tolerant to the increased levels of dopamine, and individuals have to take increased and more potent quantities of that substance to maintain that same high or that same euphoria. That is the cycle of addiction. This cycle can be influenced by genetics, stress, environmental factors, and especially childhood traumas, in which case many individuals grew up with a dopamine deficient disorder, which leaves them susceptible to addiction. So just how powerful is that? Let's compare some dopamine release rates. If we have a baseline of 100%, that's just you walking around. When we have food, this meal, which we know we need to survive, our dopamine releases to about 150%. Video games, which if you have any teenagers, you know can be addictive, that gives us a dopamine rush of about 170%. Procreation is about 180%. Now we get up to the field of dopamine releasing from cocaine or opioids, and we're at about 400%. Methamphetamine is about a 1,300% dopamine release. What we have been seeing lately is a lot of substances being laced with fentanyl. That has been even pushing dopamine release rates up closer to the 2,000 mark. So, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to go on a diet. I cannot handle a diet that doesn't let me eat bread. And that's at 150%. So, when you're asking somebody to simply stop using or just stop taking drugs, you're really asking a tall order when somebody has, now their brain is chemically wired to have a rush of 400+% of dopamine to feel good. What can we do about it? Well, we offer 2 FDA-approved medications in the form of buprenorphine. Some of you, belly's there, don't worry. In the form of buprenorphine, which some of you may have heard is also known as Suboxone. And we use naltrexone. So when we use those partial antagonists and antagonists, they actually block those receptors or partially block those receptors so that somebody can actually start feeling normal for the first time and their brain can adjust to a more normal level. So medication-assisted treatment, which is what we provide when combined with behavioral health, is really the gold standard of treatment. We also work closely with groups in town like AA or NA or Celebrate Recovery just to have well-rounded support for all our patients. It's been proven to decrease cravings, increase patient retention in programs like ours, as well as having a higher rate of complete abstinence after the rehab process. We all know that this is a national epidemic. On this slide, you can see how many deaths were recorded on a county level from 1999 up until 2014. So the dark purple area are counties that had 20 people out of 100,000 die from opioid overdose. Now this is 2014. I can tell you I did not have an updated picture of this map, but it got increasingly worse. The worst year for Missouri so far has been 2018. Bringing it closer to home, you can see where we are in Polk County here. We have the second highest rates of babies born with neonatal abstinence syndrome, which means babies that are born actually actively withdrawing from drugs that their mother may have did take during pregnancy. This is part of the grant that we received to address this problem. So we have funding opportunities and support services, especially for women, pregnant women and moms dealing with addiction. But we also have seen a huge increase on this in our workforce. Of course, you can't have a workforce without individuals and families, and everybody, as we saw by our show of hands, has been impacted by addiction. The American Action Forum, AAF, examined the impact of, sorry guys, getting ahead of myself. Examined the impact of SUD on the workforce. West Virginia and Arkansas were the two states most affected. As SUD resulted in a 3.8% decline in labor participation. Missouri was the third most affected state in the nation, with a 3% labor force drop, followed by Georgia, New York, and Kentucky. When focusing on just prime age workers, which is ages 25 to 54, the AAF study found that between 1999 and 2015, opioid addiction, or SUD, reduced the Missouri labor force by 2.7%. It's estimated that SUD costs Missouri $34.5 million every day and $12.6 billion in a year, when combining, the diminished workforce as well as the downstream economic impact. To review some industry-specific data, I'm not going to read through everything, but I'll just highlight the number of reduced jobs in these fields due to substance use disorder. In agriculture, 2,052 jobs, mining, 330, utilities, 693, construction, 6,518, wholesale trade, 6,324, transportation and warehousing, 4,347, healthcare, 15,243, manufacturing, 14,744. Healthcare and manufacturing combined is almost the whole percentage of our entire state GDP that's lost because of SUD. One of the reasons that healthcare and manufacturing are higher than some of the other industries is because they're more labor intensive, and any of the fields that have more labor intensity have a higher percentage of workers that are injured at work and then are prescribed opioids, and sometimes they're susceptible to addiction from those opioids. What about the impact on business? Workers with untreated substance use disorder miss an average of 14.8 days per year compared to an average of 10.5 days for most employees. Diminished labor force participation caused by SUD shrinks the talent pool, making it even more difficult for employers to find and retain workers, and especially skilled workers. These challenges often result in more stress for business owners, as I'm sure you all can attest to. And they cause a ripple effect that reduces economic potential throughout communities and across the state. While the loss of workers significantly impacts individual business productivity, a diminished workforce also limits the potential for economic growth and business capacity that really affects the overall state economy. So what can we do about it? Well, one of the things that we can do is really reduce barriers to treatment through an initiative called the Recovery Friendly Workplace. And I touched on this a little bit when I was here before, but 80% of those with SUD never get help, which is so unfortunate. Those with SUD often have co-occurring mental disorders associated with anxiety and depression, making them even more vulnerable in a stressful work environment to be triggered and to relapse. Individuals with SUD, even those in treatment, are often stigmatized as junkies or drug addicts and battle feelings of guilt and shame while also trying to keep their cravings under control. Our patients come from every age group, economic background, and walk of life. We treat everyone from late teens to grandparents, the unemployed to high-paid professionals. Addiction moves beyond economic status, but it is treatable. Many individuals are not aware of the treatment options that we have right here in Bolivar outside of groups like NA or AA, or they don't know that there are medications that can assist in treating withdrawal symptoms. Because it's difficult for individuals and communities to talk about the disease, treatment for the disease is also not discussed. And that's what we need to change. And that's part of the reason why I'm so honored to be here today, because if we can talk about it, then we can manage it. If you, or if you have an employee or even a family member or a loved one that you suspect is struggling with substance use disorder, we encourage you to open a line of communication with them in a private, safe environment through open-ended questions that emphasize support. So, for example, you've been late to work several days. What's going on? What can I do to help you? What can I do to help support you into treatment? Are you ready for treatment? These are the kind of things that, believe it or not, when we approach patients, they're willing to talk. They want help. One of the biggest concerns that patients have is they're afraid of the stigma surrounding addiction, and they don't want anyone to know that they have a problem, or that they're afraid they're gonna lose their job. So saying something like, you don't have to worry about losing your job while you go and get help makes a huge difference in someone's life. We also think it's really important to look at your organization and identify processes that could be a barrier to somebody seeking treatment. So for example, a lot of factories have a demerit system for employees that take time off work or have to leave for a treatment. We have employees that often cancel their appointments or delay appointments because they don't want to get demerits at work and they work in a factory setting. This puts vulnerable patients at a greater risk for relapse or for discontinuing their treatment altogether. So we would really encourage you to look at what internal processes you have that might be stopping somebody or impeding somebody from being able to take off an hour or two to get treatment. And let me tell you a little bit about what our program can do to help support you. That's why we're here. We care deeply about our patients, but we care so deeply about this community. And the Chamber of Commerce is a heartthrob of this community. And so we want to link with you and help support you and do what we can. Just to give you a background of what we've been seeing at our clinic, we opened in August of 2018. We started seeing 75 patients per month. In 2019, we increased over 50% with 180 new patients during the year. Patients usually come to see us monthly. In 2020, we started treating an additional 230 new patients. In 2021, we have already seen 200 new patients in just the first quarter of the year. In the fall of this year, we're going to be moving to Butterfield Park Medical Center through grant funding, which Will Wheeler helped support our grant application, help us get, to accommodate our consistently growing patient base and the need for expansion. Approximately 50% of our patients are unemployed and are seeking employment. About 35% of our patients that have been seeking employment in the past, after starting treatment, have found it. We work very closely with the dietary staff at CMH to provide warm referrals for patients seeking employment, and would also be available to direct employment seekers to your organization. If you have an employee who may be struggling with a substance, we're available to talk to them or even screen them for substance use disorder over the phone, via telehealth, or even in person. All of our meetings are completely confidential. We treat in an outpatient capacity, which means that patients don't spend the night at our facility, and it does enable patients to return to work once they're stable. Typically, patients are stabilized within about a week or two. We do our best to have walk-in availability on a daily basis. With this patient population, it's very important to strike while the iron's hot. If somebody says that they're ready for treatment, we do everything we can to get them in within 24 to 48 hours. That's the golden window. If that window, the smaller that window gets, the further out we have to push those appointments, the less likely they're going to show up. We can connect with employees in need of other community resources such as housing, food needs, legal advocacy, counseling, or other support services. And we're also available to come to speak to your management, staff, or employees about treatment and a recovery-friendly workplace. We also are big advocates for Narcan training and Narcan accessibility at the workplace. If you don't know what Narcan is, it is a nasal spray that, remember, go back to those first slides of those receptors. If those receptors are invaded with opioids and somebody is overdosing, Narcan spray kicks them out and immediately sends somebody into a withdrawal to save their life. We provide Narcan training. We have grants that can provide Narcan on site if you want to have it at your place of business or at your home. It's good to have it anywhere where there's also opioids. We also have something called Datura bags, and I went a little crazy ordering these through grant, so I have hundreds. But this is a safe and effective way that you can dispose of medications or opioids or other substances. You open the bag, put water in, shake it, and you can throw it away, and it renders whatever's inside of it unusable. So I have 2 boxes by the fireplace, and if anybody would like to grab some on the way out, or grab the box, I would be grateful. But this is a harm reduction measure to try to reduce the number of pills and things that are on the street and reduce the risk of those things getting sold. So, can I answer any questions? I wasn't really that good.
Is it correct that the services of the, and you may have covered this, I'm sorry I might have spaced out, but the services that you provide can, at least in some circumstances, be provided at no cost to the patient?
That is true. So services for medication-assisted treatment are covered by insurances. If you have somebody that does not have insurance, we do have a sliding fee scale program at the hospital, but under certain parameters, we also have grant funding that we can use to help somebody start medication, cover medication costs, cover counseling. Yes. Yes, sir.
You may not be able to answer this, but is there a reason that this region of the country has such an issue with methamphetamine in particular?
Part of the reason is its accessibility. I would say our meth problem is rural America's meth problem. I was on a phone call yesterday with people in West Virginia and Arkansas and parts of Kentucky, and rural areas seem to be susceptible to it because of the accessibility of the ingredients used to make it. We're seeing a trend now where meth is not being made at home as much as it was 10 years ago. So you're not seeing like meth trailers blow up anymore because it's being brought in through the southern border. Because of where we are logistically with our highways, I think that's another big reason why we're susceptible to things coming in through the southern border. But that's what we're seeing. The scary thing that we're seeing is that more and more products are getting laced with fentanyl. That's been a big issue in Springfield. We're seeing higher overdose rates in urban areas with fentanyl. We're starting to see meth laced with fentanyl. We're starting to see marijuana laced with fentanyl. And it's increased polysubstance use. But we do treat meth. And there's not an FDA-approved medication specifically for meth, but for some reason, naltrexone, when it's combined with a behavioral health stimulator, it works. And we've had a lot of patients successfully been able to stop using meth. Yes.
Another question, do you, okay, so I can imagine someone who has an addiction issue, potentially one of the reasons they might be hesitant to seek treatment might be because of fears of getting justice involved, or if they've been justice involved prior, getting probation revoked, whatever.
Mhm.
Is there a confidentiality with this treatment program such that law enforcement is not,
Yeah,
or how does that work? How does that interaction work?
sure. A lot of people are afraid of legal repercussions if they come forward and say they've been using. You cannot be in legal trouble if you have something in your body and you're seeking treatment. We do not call the police, we don't call the sheriff's office, we treat our patients. We do have a grant I'll back up. All of us have heard of HIPAA, right? We can't tell any of your medical information because of HIPAA laws. Well, substance use treatment in a clinic like ours actually even has another layer of HIPAA on top of it, called the CFR 42. So we have even more stringent confidentiality clauses that protect the identity of our patients and what they're exactly being treated for. So when you come to see us, it's confidential. We do have a grant through the Department of Corrections here in Missouri, and we do treat individuals in probation and parole. They have to, because they are in probation or parole and under a grant, they usually allow information to be shared with their parole officer. That's not something we openly give parole officers, but we talk to the patient about it. A lot of times parole officers are with them at the appointment and discuss. We do everything we need to do on our legal side to make sure that that confidentiality is not breached. But if somebody is in treatment, their chances of not being reincarcerated goes way up. So people stay in treatment. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any danger of becoming addicted to the medicines that are helping them get off of meth?
That's a great question. A lot of people, when we started working in this field, said, well, aren't you just replacing one drug with another? And that is a big misconception about medication-assisted treatment. The two medications that we use, one is, I told you, blocks that receptor. That's called naltrexone. That is a non-habit forming, non-opioid medication that individuals can take, and they won't be able to get high or have euphoria if they relapse. So that medication is not habit forming. Suboxone, which a lot of people know, is a buprenorphine product, and those products have a different levels of opioids in them. So if we have a patient come in that is addicted to opioids, but they have legitimate pain issues, they're not going to be a candidate for naltrexone. Naltrexone blocking those receptors means that they won't have any pain relief, and they usually go back to using what they did before. So when we put somebody on buprenorphine, they are satiating the craving that they have for an opioid, but it's manufactured to where you're not going to get a huge dopamine release, and you're not going to get your high. So when you're looking at a wave of somebody who uses opioids to get high, they're high, and then they slump way down, then they want to use again, they go up and down, and that's kind of the wave you see. With Suboxone, you stay in the middle. You just have you build up a tolerance, and you can manage your pain, but what our patients describe it as is they're seeing clearly for the first time. When we started our program, we used to try to have patients see a counselor before they came to us, and it didn't work. But now, if we have somebody start on medication and you clear those cobwebs, they have so much more success than in the next week or two building a relationship with a counselor and actually getting to the reasons of why they're addicted in the first place or what some of those triggers have been. How long does somebody stay on Suboxone? A lot of people ask. As long as they need to. If we treat this as a chronic disease, if somebody has diabetes and they are dependent on insulin to have a stable quality of life, we don't reject that person or judge that person for going into an office who continually needs to have insulin. Or if somebody needs a beta blocker for a heart issue, if their heart rate's not, or if their blood pressure is not under control and they keep coming back to the doctor, we don't fault them for a relapse in their chronic condition. So that's how we treat substance use disorder. We give somebody the minimum amount of Suboxone that they need to have an effective workplace environment, how they can go to work, have more healthy interpersonal relationships, and really just build that quality of life. Sometimes people are able to get off in 6 months or a year, but we also do not have arbitrary graduation dates. Usually, statistically, that sets people up for thinking that they're all better now, they can go back to what they were doing before, and addiction won't be a temptation. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, ma'am.
Are those same medications used for other substance abuse other than the opioids, like for alcohol or cocaine or whatever, or do you use other drugs for those?
No, those are the medications that we use for everything across the board. Now, Naltrexone is typically more successful with somebody dealing with alcohol. Suboxone is more successful for someone dealing with heroin or opioid addiction. We've been seeing a lot more polysubstance use. So it really is just an individualized plan between our patient and their doctor.
And they're not FDA approved?
Yes, they are FDA approved. Yes, ma'am.
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there something in some people's brains that make them more prone to be addicted to opioids than others?
There are genetic components, yes. As I mentioned, childhood traumas often create a dopamine deficiency in toddlers through 5 years old. So if a child has, and this is something that we screen for, if somebody has a certain number of childhood trauma events that have happened to them, they are such and such percent more likely to be susceptible to addiction because their reward center in their brain didn't quite develop the way it should have in a healthy environment. Genetically, it's estimated that about 10% of the population has just the genetic factor that makes them so susceptible to addiction that they only have to take an opioid one time and then they can't shake it. Yes, ma'am.
So a lot of times we see patients coming on, we're giving them comfort medication and they're resistant to taking that because they don't understand addiction and opiates and things like that. Do you have any educational materials we might be able to provide them?
Absolutely. We have brochures on the table, but we can get together afterwards and I'll give you my email and I'd be happy to share those things with you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Did you say that Narcan is something that it would be good for a business to have on hand? Did I hear you correctly earlier about that?
You did, and this is because Narcan should be available anywhere and everywhere. That's how I feel. So it is good to have on, it doesn't expire, it's good to have on hand. If somebody you know is using opioids, if somebody is walking down the street in front of your business and collapses in an overdose, you can save their life through squirt.
And it sounds like a miracle drug, but I guess my question is, is there any training necessary for that? Is it a controlled type substance that you'd have to order a certain way? If you improperly diagnose somebody as going through a withdrawal or something and you give it to them, could you hurt somebody by giving it to somebody who's not high and all those
Sure.
kinds of issues?
All great questions. It is not a controlled substance. It's actually derived, Narcan is derived from naltrexone, which is that complete receptor blocker. So what it's gonna do is it's just gonna throw out anything that's in those receptors, so opioids or a beta endorphin. So it's not gonna hurt somebody. There is training to get to get Narcan, and it's very simple. It's only a couple of hours, and we offer that through our clinic as well. So it would be me. I can come to your business and train everybody on what Narcan is and how to use it, and try to get some of those bottles out there. It is, all of our police department are Narcan certified and Narcan trained, so they'll always have it with them. But the challenge there is time is of the essence. So if it's something you can administer, and you don't have to wait for the police to arrive, it can make the difference between life or death.
The last part of that question was, if you give it to somebody, wrongly, can you harm them with Narcan?
No, no, you won't be able to, it won't hurt them, to take it, but, and there's certain parameters, you give it to somebody who's unconscious and not breathing, so, if somebody's awake and able to say something to you, and that's part of the training too, they don't need Narcan. But no, if, let's say somebody had a stroke, and you gave them Narcan thinking they OD'd, it won't hurt them further. Yes, ma'am.
This is a weird question. Is Narcan heat sensitive? Like, can you leave it in your glove box? Because there's been a lot of times I've heard where realtors go into a vacant house to show it and there's someone who's OD'd on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that you can leave in your car and just go grab it? And then
Yeah, actually, I've heard that you can. I have a friend of mine in Springfield that always keeps one in his glove box, and he just, I think a month ago, saw a car on the side of the road and just like went over to see if they needed help. It was somebody that OD'd, and his had been in his glove box for months, and the person came back.
And if a kid got a hold of it, I've got a 3-year-old, and does it need to be like protected, or is it like safety sealed where they can't really get
It is safety sealed, but like any medication, do not have it where children can get it.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes,
Kristen,
ma'am.
you work with, for your years of experience working like with employers and working with family members who are caring for people, you have a lot of things in place for those who are addicted. What advice or what top 3 steps or something do you give to those who are involved? Because I know from my personal experience, there is a fine line between helping and enabling. And how do you address that or help people who are working with your patients?
We have a lot of calls from people that they have a son or a daughter or a spouse. What do I do about them? I know they're using, I want to help, what do I do? The first thing is to have a conversation with that person. If somebody is not expressing that they are ready for treatment, treatment will not be successful. We have had family members bring someone into our clinic who is not ready for treatment, and it does not go well. If family members are in a situation where they are being emotionally, physically taxed because of the relationship with somebody who is dealing with substance use disorder, you have to protect yourself. We have worked with families where somebody with substance use disorder has become emotionally badgering, physically abusive. In those situations, you need to keep yourself safe, and that doesn't just mean physically, that means mentally and emotionally as well. There's sources here in town. We work with House of Hope, we work with our police department, we work with other organizations where if somebody needs to be removed from a home, we'll talk to them about treatment. And that's a really tough place for families, and I don't recommend trying to navigate that yourself. There are so many support systems in our town that can help individuals navigate that if that's a situation that you're in, please email me. Please let me know what we can do to support you and give you tools and give you people here in town that will be able to intervene and take that burden off of you. Somebody who is a mom dealing with a son that has addiction, usually that has a lot of co-occurring behavioral health disorders and mental health disorders. That mom does not have the tools to be a psychiatrist or an addictionologist. They're a mom. That individual needs to be treated by the people who are specialized to treat that. I would also say that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, but did that answer your question? A little bit. I would also say that if we have grant funding in place as well for grandparents raising grandkids. That is very, very prevalent here in Bolivar. So if you are somebody who, or you know somebody who is raising little kids in their family that are not their own because the parents are struggling with addiction, we have funding in place to help with respite care, help with daycare. If you can't afford daycare, I mean, there's so many added expenses for other family members that are raising kids that are not their own because of addiction. Please reach out to me. We have those resources available as well. Anybody else? Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm always available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. That's both informative and helpful. I want to remind everyone, for those of your colleagues that aren't able to attend today, we are posting these on YouTube, the YouTube channel. So this may be one that you say, hey, if anyone's interested in, it's available on YouTube. We do have a short presentation from Gail Noggle with the City of Bolivar in the Economic Development, and Cynthia Collins regarding the Act Ready Work Program. So we're going to turn it over to them for about 10 minutes.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. I know we're running a little tight on time, so I'm Gail Noggle. I'm with the Economic Development Alliance Group, and my office at City Hall. We're trying more and more to make sure that people understand that although we all work together, where there is a kind of a separation of duties of what we go through. One of those things that the Economic Development Alliance is doing now is getting the community, Bolivar and Polk County, recertified as a work-ready community. We all know that there's a huge workforce need in our area with the 650 new jobs that we've added, but it was an issue prior to that, and we're not alone in this challenge. It's pretty much across the country. So it's important for our community to remain active and diligent with some of these programs that get our students ready to go into the workforce. The Work Ready Community Certification process is starting again for our recertification for 3 years. I might mention that this is separate from BOMO Works, which we all know is an unbelievable program here in our community, but it complements that. And I invited Cynthia Collins to come and visit a little bit about this Work Ready program. Cynthia is with Missouri Career Center, and she and I have a pretty lengthy background and relationship. We've been helping communities with their workforce for about 15 years now, I guess. We kind of thought, how long has it been that we've been working together? So this process is something that if you're not familiar with, please get yourself familiar with it, because it's important for everybody here in this room and for our students and our children and grandchildren to be ready to enter into the workforce. And this is just one of the tools of several that's going to be available. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia and let her take the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Gail. And like Gail said, we have been working together for many, many years. And this is a great topic to follow behind Christine, because one of the things that she touched on is our workforce. And I'm talking about a certified work-ready community. And right now, Polk County is already certified, and we're working on maintaining that. And this is an initiative that has been around since probably 2007, and maybe even a little earlier than that. And this is put out from the Department of Labor and ACT. So we're all familiar with ACT when folks go to college, but the Department of Labor has partnered with them, and what they have come up with, workplace skills. And what that means is there is 3 workplace skills that we all use to certain degrees. And we are, as a community, is trying to make sure that our community is very, very strong. This initiative is a threefold, like I said. It's an economic development, it's an employer, and it's a job seeker initiative. And it benefits the whole community. We work as a region. So Polk County is in 7 regions. And so when economic developers go out, what they do, they sell the whole region. And that's why it's very important that we maintain our certification. On your table, I have left some information, and one is about the assessment of the ACT, the Certified Work Ready Community, and the other is building on your workforce. As we all know right now, it's very hard to get a skilled labor workforce, and the wages, the competitive wages are increasing. In order to get someone in the workplace right now, we're talking $15 an hour. Okay, that's a competitive wage that's going on right now. And so when you're doing your hiring, you want to make sure that you have the right person the first time, because it's costing you more for that applicant. So we want to make sure that the individual, they are tested. And everything that I'm talking about is free. It's free to the job seeker and it's free to the employer. And what they're being tested on is locating information, applied math, and reading for information. These are the 3 skill sets that we all use in some degree in our work right now. So we want to assess the individuals. We want to build on that workforce. We want to verify that they have the skills by them taking the test. It's a 3.5-hour proctor test, same as the ACT. And what they can earn is a bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And it shows the skill levels that they have, and it also shows the potential that that applicant has as well. And then you want to make sure that you hire the best employee. Because like I said, I work at the job center. I work with employers all the time. Wage increase is the #1 thing that's going on right now. How much am I going to get paid? People are jumping ship for $1 more, $2 an hour. So we want to make sure that we're hiring the best applicant from the very, very beginning of this. This individuals, when you put in a job order with us at the Career Center, and our system is like Career Builder or Indeed, what happens, the employer posts their job, the job seeker goes in and looks for their job. Anyone that has taken the National Career Readiness Certificate, those applicants will come forth first. Also like veterans get priority of service as well. Those applicants will come first, and those are the individuals that you can see what their skill sets are already. And so, like I said, it's free of charge. There's no charge to the job seeker or the employer. But like Gail says, we're working on maintaining this. And this happens, we work with the schools, we work with employers, we work with communities. And right now, we're at 60%. And in Polk County, our goal was 218 in the emerging workforce, and that's students coming out. Right now, we actually got 341. Our current people that are in the workforce, the goal is 32. Right now, we have 31. We only need 1 current. Transition, those are individuals that are transitioning from maybe one career to another. Our goal is 182. We have 163. Employer engagement, our goal is 32. Right now we have 16. And yesterday we just bombarded Gail with a whole lot of other employer supports. So as you can see, work is going on in your community. You're doing an outstanding job, Polk County, and we just want to keep it up. On your table, if you're an employer, there's information how you can partner to support this. And this is a tool that is used in economic development. Anytime an employer is looking to come to the area, the first thing they want to know is, tell me about your workforce. And before using this tool, we would say, well, there's a lot of farm country, farmers are hard workers, but now we have something tangible that we can actually tell them, this is what's going on in Polk County. Any questions? Yes.
When is the certification through? How long does Polk County have to complete?
Our certification expires in 3 months. So in 3 months, we need to make sure that we have this, but we're already certified, we're maintaining. And when maintaining is actually different levels. So meaning that, okay, we have gone and improved that we can be a certified community. Now we're maintaining it with other goals of saying that, okay, these are our success rates. This is what we're doing. So we already are certified, we just want to maintain. Yes.
Who's doing the testing and when and where?
Okay, so the testing is done at the Career Center.
Which is where?
In Springfield, 2900 East Sunshine. It also, we have come to your schools and tested your high school students in your schools. We have brought our mobile out and tested on our mobile. So any way that we can make sure that it's a proctor environment and we can do some testing. All right, thank you.
All right, we're quickly running out of time, so I'm going to we've got the list, we're gonna do our Bolivar Herald Free Press giveaway. And what are our number choices?
1 through 40.
Okay, let's,
Favorite number, JT?
38.
38 is going to be Mike Usry.
okay.
I'll have to.
I think we tried to give it to you once before, didn't we? What's your next favorite number?
35.
35 is going to be, here, looks like JT, somebody. Third time's a charm, brother, give me that one more number.
1.
Number
Nope, I
one,
already got-
Frank Sweeney.
Oh, okay, Frank, there we go.
All right. See the gentleman here, free ads in the paper.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Just a couple quick reminders. June 11th and 12th, that's this weekend. We've got the Bolivar Lady Liberator Sonic Shootout, so that always brings in more people to the community. Make sure you're ready for that. June 12th is also the Slinging Acres Fun Day at the farm. It's from 3 to 6 p.m. and that's at 3796 South 33rd Road in Dunnigan. June 17th through the 19th, that's the Polk County Fair. There's information I've seen on social media coming out about that already, so we're glad to be able to do that again this year. June 19th is the 8th annual BOMO Summer Volleyball Tournament. July 4th, of course, is our Bolivar Rotary Club Celebration of Freedom. July 8th is our next networking at noon. We're going to be auctioning off the first pitch for the Bolivar Night at the Springfield Cardinals that day, which July 29th is our Bolivar Night at the Springfield Cardinals. And then again, August 10th is our new teacher welcome luncheon. Thank you all for attending. I think I just lost power here. We don't have time to do roundtables today, but please, I encourage you to stay and network so that way we can all know what's going on in the community. And again, it will be on, the program will be on YouTube. I encourage you to let people know that so that way they can see today's program. Thank you again to our speakers. Also, there are still some lunches. If you want to take one home or back to work, they are available for $8 still. I think we have some extras in the back, so please feel free to take those.
Many thanks again to the church for